Newcastle 3, Liverpool 3, a storming classic, almost a 4-3, almost a 6-4. It was just stunning, Andy Brassel. We were second screening it, weren't we? There was so many matches taking place.
Yes.
You had some pervy European stuff to watch as well.
Yes. Yes, I did. I had the sort of equivalent of the goal show, but for the German Cup on my laptop.
Oh my God!
And almost
a parody of myself. But yeah, this kept drawing my attention because it was so good. And Newcastle needed a great performance after like a couple of weeks of stuff on the pitch that has led to stuff off the pitch. And as we were saying on yesterday's Ramble, it feels like the first time that Eddie Howe has been challenged really by Newcastle fans and people around the club, and there's been some sort of doubt over him. And so what did he do? Well, he doubled down on what they're best at, really. I mean, it was funny. I was talking to someone earlier who was saying, well, a Newcastle fan in our production staff, who was saying the way that Newcastle played in this doesn't necessarily convince him that they could do the same against like West Ham,
Brentford
the games that they've lost, for example. Yeah, but this, I mean, I think it was maybe the perfect game at the perfect time because they had no option but to rise to the challenge.
Yeah, when Newcastle, it seems, are asked to sort of break teams down, they really, really do come up short. And they have done right the way through his tenure, I would say, as a Newcastle supporter. But whenever they play the big boys and they don't get quite as much of the ball, they suddenly become this like Manchester United primo hit teams on the break, kind of like wonder boys. it's
not
really,
recent Man
really,
United. Make that very clear.
Not recent Man United. No, sorry. Premier kind of like late era Sir Alex Ferguson hit him on the break. Man United. Luke, did you enjoy the? It wasn't swagger, but it was just industry and hard work and closing down. And Liverpool, let's face it, probably having a little bit of an off day.
Well, I mean, before I get into that, I just want to make it absolutely clear to Andy that last night, when I was waiting to fly back from Boston, I was in the Hilton at Boston Logan Airport, and like no word of a lie, they were showing the penalty shootout between Karlsruhe and Augsburg in the Hilton at Boston Logan Airport. I think what must have happened was there was a German delegation or some convention happening at the hotel. They were showing the Bayern Munich game, which finished at full time. Then obviously they had some DFB Pokal kind of show, and they flicked onto that one. But I did not expect to see that when I was walking into the restaurant for dinner.
That sounds amazing. I mean, can you get me a rate there?
Yeah, it's very competitive actually. Very competitive.
It's not strictly a football hotel, but they've just lost the remote control, and it's just strictly Bundesliga stuff.
They've become a football hotel accidentally. There'll be loads of ultras in there. They won't really understand why. Anyway, going back to the game. You know what? I never thought that about Newcastle. Pete, you would watch Newcastle more closely than me, but that's a really good point. And the game last night, it was a classic, and it was really, I would say, one of those kind of nights of Premier League football which does an amazing job at marketing it as a product like the rest of the world. Like great goals, great pace and tempo, like great action, not really much defending, but no one seems to really care. I thought the quality of the goals, I mean, particularly Isak and Jones, to open
sat up lovely, Isak's, didn't it? It
did,
really,
yeah.
I mean, it deserved to be hit like that.
He's great at that as well.
Lifting up
those goals each side of half time with him and Jones were great. Like, I thought that the Queven Kelleher behaviour for Shah's goal was like bizarre, like really bizarre. Like it's
he's
almost
odd
like,
one, isn't he? Though he is odd one.
I don't think he's a bad keeper or anything, and I think he's probably going to end up being a first choice somewhere else as we've seen. But a lot of the reporting and a lot of the comments he's made would suggest that. But like it was very much like the marketing product for the Premier League. And everyone's kind of sold already, and then the last minute, Queven Kelleher does that, and you're like, "Oh, he does that. This happens as well. Fucking hell, this is amazing." So it was a really good game. It was also, I'd also say that I'd be interested in Andy's take on this because he would have watched his teams a lot more closely probably than you and I, Pete. Like that's in the first half of that game, particularly when Newcastle closed out the first half, a goal ahead. That's probably the most unhappy I've seen Arne Slot. Like he looked like he was a little bit confused. And to me, I don't want to get all kind of jingoistic about it, but it felt a bit to me. Now, they've come out of it with a draw. They've battled it through. They're actually very unlucky not to win the game, Liverpool. It was only a defensive goalkeeping error, which meant they didn't. So that's a great testament to his ability to adjust as a coach, of course. But it felt to me a bit like he was thinking, okay, so the Premier League is a bit like this as well, because he's actually had it quite. I mean, they had that one kind of anomaly against Nottingham Forest back in September. Other than that, they've been on the end of a couple of ding-dongs, but they've been on the right end of them, and they've been against teams they'd be expected to beat. So they had a 3-2 against Brighton away in the Cup, didn't they? And they beat Southampton in a bit of a kind of you have a go, we have a go type affair. Southampton are a poor side, we'll come on to that. But this was the first time I feel like they've
with relish.
Absolutely, I'm looking forward to it. This is the first time I think that they've been like... Because even like the last game, they played Man City when Man City are having a nightmare, right? So it was a bit like, I felt like this was finally the real baptism into the Premier League. And then the beautiful part about that is they followed that up with the Merseyside derby at the weekend. So Andy, I'll be interested on your thoughts about how Slot was with it and how he adjusted, because to me it felt a bit like a baptism of fire, as I said.
I guess that's the interesting thing. You could look at it in isolation and say Arne Slot is going to Newcastle for the first time thinking, wow, bloody hell. Like rainy Wednesday night, a lot of noise from the start of the game, and it sort of takes you aback a little bit. But to me, it felt more like Slot, and you talked about his reaction on the touchline, that he was surprised negatively by his players' performance and by the way they dealt with things. And funnily enough, Pete, I would flip it back to last season, where you have the Newcastle-Liverpool game right at the start of the season, where Virgil van Dijk gets sent off in the first half, and let's be honest, he could have been sent off in the first half of this one as well.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, because it's almost as if Liverpool have played the first half of that game and the first half of this game like they've never played at St James's Park before, and like they're completely unaware of the context.
Listen to Mbappe. Listen to the comments that have been made recently, guys. Yeah. Anfield is nonsense. It's
did you get a trophy? Did you get a trophy for that in Newcastle?
Well, it'd be nice to smelt something down to make something. Yeah,
but I mean, guys, we're going to get a trophy. We're smelting. We are smelting.
Smelt it.
Tune in on our YouTube page for a live smelting.
Fire up the furnace, for crying out loud. I've been watching a lot of smelting on YouTube. With the Virgil van Dijk shoulder into it was Gordon's head, wasn't it? Gordon, and there's a lot of head there. To be honest, he's got a very long one,
and he's exactly the right height for Van Dijk's shoulder.
Why isn't that getting looked at?
I'm sorry.
Like, there was a few bits where you're like, all right, fine. We're not here to sort of renegotiate VAR calls, but that seemed like a really. Was it just because it was at the end of a move and they just didn't notice it? Is there going to be a report about it? It just seems very bizarre that he didn't get the hook for it.
It feels to me like they don't want to be seen at the moment to be re-refereeing games after all the criticism they've got, and they keep saying they want the threshold to be high. Now, that stuff is boring chat unless you're a Newcastle fan. That is such
an English phrase, though, isn't it? We want the threshold to be high. Just make the right decision. Do you think that's what it's meant to be there for?
I think Van Dijk is saying, I am going to do this every game until you sort that contract out. You want to see how destructive I can be? I think about Van. Do you know what? I may be wrong, and Liverpool fans will come after me if I am, I'm sure, because they always do. But it feels to me that Van Dijk does defend like this a lot. He's a very, so he's obviously a really classy operator. I like how he started to adjust as well, even in his older age as a defender, as a top level football player. He reads the game really well, and he's obviously an amazing leader. But he is like super physical. He's
like chilled Sergio Ramos. He always likes to find where the line is.
Totally.
If you go back to
the line in the Premier League is higher than it is elsewhere, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. If you go back to autumn when Netherlands played away in Hungary. He gets a ridiculous red card where you're thinking someone of that age should know a lot better. Are you thinking I shouldn't be feeling Sergio Ramos feelings about Virgil van Dijk, really?
Yeah, it's nice to feel him again, though. It's nice to feel something, though, Andy, isn't
it? But all that makes me think is like when Virgil van Dijk's out of contract next summer, will he be filming like loads of videos, he'd getting his wife to hold the camera while he like hauls 4 tyres up his drive.
I'd love that. I also love the fact that there was talk that Anthony Gordon had a medical booked at Liverpool last summer, and it's like Van Dijk saying, you ain't going to fucking pass the next one, mate. Because I'm rearranging your fucking solar plexus and your neck. You're going to need fucking therapy for years after I've dealt with it. Don't even think about coming here.
I mean, it's for Newcastle. It's a bit of probably a bit of a sticking plaster for Eddie Howe, but there are kind of underlying issues. They can't keep this pace up 24/7, and most teams don't have that kind of McAllister to starve really, because there are kind of threats all over the pitch. And I think that was kind of where it was where the fruit came from Newcastle side of things. On the refereeing, there were a couple of sort of moments that were that Eddie Howe was clearly, through gritted teeth, absolutely fine with, actually.
And if I'm not, how come I am?
Referee Andy Madley, he basically said, "Hey guys, if you want to have a chat, come round to the rumpus room." And Arne Slot took him up on that, and he went at half time to have a little powwow with Andy. Should that be allowed? Is that okay? I don't think that's that weird, unless it's like he's like getting your head and putting it in a vice, like in the film Casino. Unless it's like, presumably there are other referees there, and probably recorded, hopefully. I don't know. Can you really sort of turn the knife like at half time? Is that, should both managers pop in for a chat?
I might have missed something here, but I don't think the referee should be being talked to at all during the game, like in that way, behind the scenes. I think that's weird.
It's not so much the mechanics of it; it's the optics of it, isn't it?
Yes.
And the optics are so important.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I would also say that, you know, the way that the referee blew up for full time was weird as well. And you know what though? I wonder in a weird way, speaking of optics, Andy, I wonder if that actually played into Newcastle's hands a bit, because look, the stage was set. We know the history. So those who didn't see the game, Newcastle were on the break. It was 3-3. It's about 15 seconds past the allotted minimum 5 minutes, and there had been some stoppages in this injury time itself. So
they could have pretty long free kick.
There could have been feasibly a couple more minutes.
Unbelievably gave to Isak instead of bloody Fabian Schär.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, he deserved to have it.
Kelleher's number.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
So annoying.
They were back, I don't know, they were 3-on-3 or 4-on-3 or something like that, but they were pushing forward with pace, and they just got into Liverpool's half. It looked like a dangerous attack, actually, and the referee blew up, which is mental. He should never have done that. But I wonder if... and I'll tell you why he should never have done that. Because if you are a referee who wants to show that I am in control... I'm happy to speak to the managers at half-time. I'm going to explain my decisions of whatever the fuck he's doing. I mean, I don't think he should be doing it, as I've said. Then you can't
maybe he's got a six-pack of pork pies he needs to get rid of.
Yeah, if you want
or a Subway 12-incher. He can't eat the whole thing.
A deli block of cheese under his coat. And he wants to sell it.
He's selling the car
but I'm just saying, you can't. If you want to exude confidence and someone who's in control of their brief, you cannot blow up at the end of the game in that situation. But the way it kind of plays into Newcastle's hands is it's a really good, visible example of them being quite hard done by the officials. You look at the Virgil van Dijk thing. You look at that and you go, okay, we got out of there against a team who were miles clear at the top of the league with a 3-3. And we went toe-to-toe with them, and the referee was a fucking idiot. That's actually not that bad.
Use it.
I just wonder, the other thing, to take it slightly away from the refereeing, in terms of how Newcastle might have something to take forward from this, rather than it just be an isolated good performance and an isolated big night. Play the big three in midfield, and it makes a massive difference. And you know, we talked about it yesterday. Does Howe see in his mind, is there a compatibility between Bruno Guimaraes and Sandro Tonali? Well, look, we've got the answer there, haven't we? And I think almost, I feel that if they can put Tonali in the team for like most of the games for the rest of the season, and they should be able to.
He was fantastic.
He was unbelievable, wasn't he? And I think you look at the fact that how difficult it is for a lot of players, especially defenders and midfielders, arriving for their first year in the Premier League, because of his situation. He's almost had a year's soft launch of bedding in, and that's what's made it so frustrating that he hasn't played more, really, because he should be readier than any other player, pretty much, because it's a really unusual situation to be able to give yourself a year to adapt to English football. And because they haven't got any European games, there's not really any excuse for not starting in every game. I don't know what they've been waiting for. Obviously, he sees something different in training to what we see on a Saturday or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or whatever. But if they are going with that midfield three, that could solve a lot of their problems, I think.
That almost guarantees Andy ACL for Tonali at Brentford this weekend. But I mean, we spoke about it on the show yesterday, and Howe was basically saying that there are a lot of issues in the club, but usually like above him, I suppose. But Bruno Guimaraes was one foot out the door. Alexander Isak as well, obviously a big sort of marquee signing that's worth a lot of money, and if they need to get a bit of money to get new players in, they need to sell, unfortunately. And Anthony Gordon, like Luke said, did have a medical booked for Liverpool. Isak apparently is unhappy that Newcastle aren't offering him a new contract yet. Do you remember when players would just get to the end of the contract and sign another one, rather than one contract to get me through the door and then the second to truss me up? Do you know what I mean? It's like it's like a welcome contract, and then about 6 months later you play well and then you get another contract. It is weird, isn't it?
Which player would you like to truss up the most, Peter?
Oh, who's the most trustable? I mean, Van Dijk could be magnificent. He would really dominate a room, I think, wouldn't he? It'd be like a beautiful art display. It'd be like that banana
I'm just instantly regretting asking you that. I would add to Newcastle.
He wants a new contract.
He does. He seems like he does. I would add that what's interesting to me, and like I say, don't watch. Andy lives up there. You support Newcastle. So both of you know much more about them than I do. But
compromised. We're both compromised.
Yeah. Well, that's another way of looking at it. Yeah. In different ways. I find it interesting how few goals Newcastle have scored this season compared to last season. Like last season, they scored so many goals. Yeah. They didn't really get the league position that was commensurate with the goals they scored, if that makes sense.
Totally.
To me, it feels like, if only Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City score more goals than you, and by the way, like Liverpool only scored one more goal than them in the league last season, yet got 22 points more than them.
That's wild.
And then you follow that up with actually a very mediocre goal scoring start to the season. And we are in December now. It's not like we're talking about this at the end of August. We've bedded into the season. They can't really score.
Did you see the Gordon one-on-one in the first half? That is indicative of what.
But they scored 3 last night, right? They scored 3 last night,
exactly,
which is massively against what they've been doing so far.
But I mean, the bigger concern, really, if you're talking about why it is that they're having that problem, is they go to Palace at the weekend, who statistically are one of the weaker teams in the division so far this season. And they just don't create anything. Now that's the biggest problem, really. And I think when I was talking about Eddie Howe doubling down on what they want to do. What is it? Intensity is our identity. That's what he says, isn't it?
Live, laugh, love.
Yeah. But
that sounds like management speak, Eddie, and I know you hate that. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, I think the problem is with that.
It's just Jason Tindall.
It's like, we've sort of spoke about it with Manchester City this season. The idea that you can keep going to the well and going to the well and going to the well, especially if you don't have any turnover of the squad. It's just not realistic, really, is it? That's when you start to... People talk about staleness and, do you need some new faces to make it up? I think there's a physical and mental angle to it as well. Funnily enough, before this current round, the only thing that I've really heard Newcastle fans or journalists around Newcastle criticise or question Eddie Howe for in any volume is the fact that he doesn't know when to step off, that he doesn't know when to give the players a little break, that intensity is our identity thing is one of their biggest strengths, but also one of their biggest weaknesses.
Yeah, and I think I would just add before we move on that it's looking like now that if they, given the ownership they've got and the motivation and the ambition they have, if they do want to become what they say they want to become, to me it looks fairly clear now that it's probably not going to be Eddie Howe that steers them to that level. Like they had that really overachieving season last season, scored loads, didn't really do anything, didn't get into European competition really at all, and this season they just look mid-table, and it doesn't seem to me that the ownership that's not really why they're involved in it, is it? I mean, so it seems to me that something does have to change. But whether they counter him or not, I don't know. He's going to become, if he's not careful, he's going to become a stepping stone manager in the future, and in the history of the club.
So what I'm hearing is for the intensity that Eddie Howe needs, blood doping is the answer. Coming up, the Premier League title race is back on.
Pete Donaldson's personal opinion,
and
not
Pep reminds us how cool he is.
I'm bored watching Newcastle.
Welcome back to the Football Ramble. Arsenal 2, Manchester United 0. The Amorim, what would you call it? The honeymoon
Coup
is
d'etat?
over.
Oh, right.
Against a coup d'etat. The coup d'etat is over.
Against the
Arsenal's...
great memory of Eric Ten Hag. May he rest in forever peace.
Yeah, I guess. Were you around when Ten Hag was fired?
I
think you
can't
were,
fucking
weren't you?
remember, can I?
Oh,
I
I
don't
can't
know.
bloody remember, for crying out loud.
What I do
Things
know
have
is that
been
Man
changing
United
around here.
What I do know is that Man United had 3 managers in the space that took Man City to win a game, which is I really enjoyed.
Well, we'll come on to them. But Arsenal, it's awesome that you can kind of fall back on some really, really good set-piece play when you're when the rest of your kind of like setup is sort of grinding a little bit. It's very heartening for those kind of midweek sort of plans and algorithms to be actually working on an evening or a Saturday night.
So there's 2 ways of looking at that, really, isn't there? There's from an Arsenal perspective, obviously it's very pleasing. They've managed to do the same thing again and again. I think those goals would have almost been more at home in the first half when they were struggling to find a way through an open play, rather than in the second half when they were much improved, I thought, and they came out with a renewed plan at half-time. On the other hand, if you're Ruben Amorim, you feel that if you sort of go widescreen and look at United's season as a whole, that's like much better than they would have played under Ten Hag. We talked about yesterday in the build-up to that on the Ramble, that you kind of feel that it's about the performance more than the result. And it was a work-in-progress performance, but quite a good one, I thought, against an Arsenal team that are really feeling it at the moment. On the other hand, if you've managed to make it competitive against a side who are much better than you, and you get done off 2 set pieces, you're going to be annoyed, aren't you?
Yeah, I watched this game and I actually agree with everything you said there, but I do also think that it seemed to me like the inevitability of a team at the very start of their new project or journey, whatever you want to call it, against a team that no matter how flawed they are pretty well established and almost automatically know what their jobs are. Yeah. Now I know that Arsenal kind of had a couple of key players out, and you know they found it perhaps a little bit trickier this season than some people would have thought. But they are off the back of 4 straight wins now, and that though I mean I've got a lot of thoughts about Amorim's United so far. But what I would say is when compared to the guy that came before, which is obviously the biggest feather in Amorim's cap at the moment. They already passed the eye test when compared to what you see under Ten Hag. I mean, there's still a long way to go.
Even the last 10 minutes, I'd sort of switched over after the match, and you could tell Arsenal were just seem to be taking them more seriously than they have done in recent seasons.
Yeah, we've actually got to try against this lot now.
We've actually got to try against this lot. They were lining up for a free kick, and I was like, they actually looked a bit worried, but a bit concerned.
Do you know what? One thing that needs to be said, and maybe it's been said enough in my absence, but I need to make sure I say it as well, is that Declan Rice's delivery from set pieces is just absolutely deadly. It's It's
which
almost,
is probably the word he'd use as well, isn't it?
It probably is. It's almost undefendable. Like the way they could have scored 4 goals from corners last night, and the way that when they do score, it always tends to be a similar type of goal. Like he puts the ball with such whip on such the right spot every time. Yeah. And defenders find it very, very difficult to deal with it. And there's always 2 ways of looking at this. You can say, well, you know, they huffed and puffed and had to rely on 2 set pieces. Or you can say, do you know what? No one scores more set pieces than them. It's a massive part of their game. Yeah. It's a totally legitimate part of how you win a football match. And they are fucking brilliant at it. And I would say that the way Declan Rice has improved, he continues to improve. He continues to add things to his game. I may be wrong. Maybe I don't watch West Ham enough, but
they didn't seem to talk about his corners as much as.
I don't remember him having that. I don't remember him being signed by Arsenal for his set piece ability. Andy, maybe I'm misremembering that, but he seems to have added that layer to his game as well.
I agree, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? When we see a player move for that amount of money, we think finished article. If he can just do the same in a better team, that's job done. But I think, because of the coach that Arteta is, it's normal that Rice develops into a better player, and he is a better player than he was at West Ham, and not just because he's surrounded by other good players, but it's part of the coaching. We know about the working on set pieces, which he's obviously been part of. But as if to underline your point about Rice's delivery, I think the thing is, when they're getting all those corners, because they do get a shitload of corners, by the way, where they get 20 odd, something like that. And I think at the start of the evening, I'm thinking, okay, it's fine to get the corners, but how are you going to score with them because you haven't got Gabriel? And actually,
they find someone doing it. Exactly,
it ends up not mattering.
But Andy, when you and I went to West Ham when Moyes was there a number of years ago now, I think it was when Moyes was there. He might have just taken on his second spell, I think, and we were chatting to people there. We were there for the day, and a lot of people were saying Declan Rice has got so much more to come. Like, he just doesn't get forward enough. He can score loads more goals. At that point, he had only... Look, I'm misremembering this, I'm sure, but I think at that point, he'd only scored like a handful of goals in his whole career. And people were saying, like, you wait till he gets forward. You wait till he gets his confidence and he can get forward. He strikes the ball so well. He's got so much more to come. And we're seeing that now. I mean, I know that his numbers aren't absolutely amazing, but... those corners last night, if I was a Man United fan, I'd be absolutely terrified every time they got one.
Do you think that would be the easiest thing to kind of patch out with training, though? Do you know, like, if you're coming to play Arsenal and you're facing a particular kind of ball delivery, do you not think that that's the sort of thing that could be patched out by teams just practicing a very specific ball from a very specific footballer? Or maybe just getting one of those kind of, like, those ball delivery robot things, just setting it to Declan Rice and just nailing that every single time, and he'll become less, less useful in that area.
I don't know, because I think that, Look at the profile of the three defenders at the back, because obviously under Amorim, United play three at the back, right? So they had De Ligt, Maguire, and Mazraoui as the back three, and I don't think they're short of height, and I don't think Harry. The reason I'll tell you something now. The reason those deliveries are so good is because if you are Harry Maguire at this stage of his career, you've got a nickname that is Slabhead. You are eating that up. I played football at a very amateur level as a tall man who was slow, right? I'm not saying I could play at any kind of level at all, because I couldn't, but I love the ball high because you can deal with that. Like, so they should be well used to being able to deal with it, and the reason they can't is because there's so much whip on them and so much like pinpoint accuracy, and the runs timed by the Arsenal players attacking the ball is so good, so well drilled. You've always got the momentum when you are back and defending, and you've got no real way of getting the momentum the other way because you're already really on your own 3 or 4 yard line, 6 yard line out from your goal. It's very, very difficult to defend against it.
But it's not just one ball either. I think that's the point, and that's the point about taking Gabriel out rather than having him in. The fact that I had an Arsenal fan say to me this morning, it was almost a tribute to 80s Arsenal. And for those younger listeners, they nailed the near post corner in the late 80s under George Graham. It was normally Steve Bold stood at the front stick, and they'd flick it on. And it was absolutely undefendable. And those they were nearer that, particularly for the Saliba goal that went in off the back of him. We were talking about goal celebration music, though, yesterday. I found it very, very disappointing. I felt like I was expecting, well, Marcus particularly probably was expecting Timber by Pitbull after the opener, right?
Nice, yeah, absolutely. Can I follow that up with a hot take? And Andy, it might be one of these hot takes that Andy can just smash me down straight away.
Right.
I like doing the hot takes.
Clear your lines, Andy. It's coming in. It's swinging in, mate.
Just so
clear your lines.
There's listeners out there that have probably noticed this already, but some of my best hot takes are when Andy's not on the show, so they can't be immediately deflated.
Yeah.
Takes a week, and once it's out there, you know what the internet's like. It's out there.
Yeah.
You can't stop it. I wonder whether. So Harry Maguire's out of contract in the summer, but they've got an option on him. They've got a year option on him, United. I wonder whether he's actually got a future at United in a back three. I can see him much more coherently in the middle of a back three under Amorim than I could ever see him in a back four at this stage of his career. Andy,
we were talking
over to you.
We were talking about improving players, and players can mean different things under different coaches. Think of Sebastian Coates at Sporting. Similar thing.
I wasn't thinking of that.
Think of him.
I'm trying to think of him. I can't.
Give him a Google and then think of him.
I can only remember cameos at Liverpool. That's all I've got.
But he was someone who was great on the ball, huge threat from set pieces, extremely error prone before Ruben Amorim.
Is it a good take or not, Andy? Just tell me that.
I think it's a decent take.
Yes!
I think Maguire could be his Coates.
Great, Pete. There you go. Move on. We can't do better than that.
Let's get out of here for crying out loud. I'm just, sorry, on me run. I got to move on. Elsewhere, you've been away, Luke, for a little while, and Man City did manage to turn over Nottingham Forest, who are doing quite well this season, has to be said. The title is apparently back on, according to most tabloid newspapers. But since you went away, Luke, it's not been all plain sailing for Pep Guardiola, and that is putting it lightly.
I had an amazing experience when I was on Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and it's not the most well-connected place. Very, very nice part of the world. You saw Pep Guardiola. He was trying to get some of the fish to play football. He's fishing, just with a big beard. No, they on Cape Cod they don't tend to care about football. It's not. I was visiting family, so I was pretty out of the loop. And there's a lot of family there I hadn't seen for a while, so it was doing our thing. And I didn't have a chance to look at my phone for ages, properly, for a couple of days probably. And I opened my phone up and just looked at the BBC football page, and I was like, what the fuck has happened to Pep Guardiola's face? I honestly thought he'd been in like a... Do you know what it looked like to me? And this is going to sound crazy, but I'm not trying to make light of his comments or the stuff he's going for. Whatever. I mean, my immediate reaction, I have to be honest, was it looked to me like he had been in a car accident and the windscreen had shattered on his face. You know what I mean? Where you get a little, the windscreen shatters and you get little kind of cuts.
It was kind of like, like we're kind of literally employed to have a giggle at everything, take an askance glance at things.
Yeah, a sideways look.
It was to the point where you were like, actually, this is actually quite an edifying. This is actually quite upsetting.
So I don't. Yeah, so
it's kind of, so it was a little bit of like, ha, and then you're like, actually, what's gone on there?
But
who
you
saw
say that, Pete,
and that has that affected the performance?
But you say that, and you know what? What's really interesting is you guys have been in the maelstrom covering the game every single day, and I haven't. From the outside looking in, I might be wrong. I'm regularly wrong. It seemed to me like it's all been a little bit blown up to be a lot more than it actually is. Partly because Man City have traditionally been so good, partly because Guardiola's quite an intense character and he takes things hard and he wears them quite clearly, and you can see that. He doesn't really have that much of a mask of command, I don't think, which a lot of top leaders in, they talk about that in kind of wars and stuff like that. The top lead commanders have to have a mask of command. He doesn't really have that. And maybe it's because I've been so far removed from it, I felt like it might be just a bit of a blip, a bigger blip than normal. They've had key players out. They look, for example, they look a bit fragile down the right-hand side. I think Walker's looked a bit cooked. And I think when there's such a feeding frenzy for content, particularly set against the background of Man City, Pep Guardiola, this impending disciplinary situation that's coming up, these charges, it's maybe just a slightly bigger blip than normal. And before I bring Andy in, I'll just say this, and what Andy's about to say may make what I'm about to say totally redundant, but it felt to me quite weird that everyone's saying that the whole thing is done and the season's finished. That may be the case because they've been so good for so long and they've been so intense for so long. But let me finish this point.
Fair, we didn't say that. We
no,
didn't
I'm not saying you did. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying you did. I'm saying the general kind of commentary I did. I want to finish the point by saying, in 2023 they won 12 in a row down the stretch. The season before that, they won 23 of their last 28 league games. And last season, they won 19 and drew 4 of their last 23. They are a machine in the second half of the season. It may have changed, but I wouldn't be ready to say they have just yet.
I agree. And I have to say, though, it would be, after what's happened recently, it's been a lovely little holiday from reality for neutrals and people who don't support Manchester City. So I don't know if City were to accelerate, as you described, and Liverpool were unable to maintain their current pace and City were to reel them in, it would be the most neutrally depressing Premier League season ever. It would be a real shame. And I mean that with no harm to City. It would be sad, I think, in terms of the competitive balance and in terms of being able to enjoy the Premier League. Sure. But the point that you were making about Guardiola, I think in terms of the results, he absolutely does, and even the performances, he absolutely does deserve slack. Like I've said, and in previous rambles, I do think there is a physical and mental wall to which they are not immune. But I think really what has informed the chat around him is his behaviour, and not just the scratchy stuff, but just the way that he really hasn't seemed to have an answer for any of it. That he's been confused.
But he makes it worse, Andy, because he's so honest and so emotionally led on that stuff. Yes. He makes it worse.
Yeah, he does. But you were talking about the leadership mask. Well, we wouldn't know because they're normally never in enough of a hole for this to be an issue. Yeah, so we're seeing him in positions, like certainly emotionally, that we've never seen him before. For example, I mean, this is how weird it is. Not just football, but society. My wife sent me a meme mocking Pep Guardiola yesterday.
That's listen.
And like she's I imagine no real interest in football.
Divorce proceedings
in between the MasterChef stuff.
Divorce proceedings are continuing at pace, are they, Andy? You've got to get out of here.
Well, when you say that about a man of the global game like Pep Guardiola,
the last time I think my wife has a very, very accurate Pep Guardiola clock, actually, because the last time she commented on Pep Guardiola to me is when he was coaching his last game for Barcelona in the Copa del Rey final against Bielsa's Athletic, and he looked absolutely exhausted. And she said to me, "Who's that old guy managing Barcelona?"
Wow.
I said, well, that's Guardiola, and she's like, "You're kidding!"
Out of the mouths of babes, eh?
You know what I mean? Sometimes you need someone out of the circle to
make it
clear.
But I think that's
to make
right.
your entire career a mockery. Yeah, exactly.
As well,
correct, Andy. All your book smarts.
I do think that you're right to say, totally. I agree with you when you said this the other day that they're not immune to this mental and physical kind of exhaustion, and what they've achieved, despite all the other stuff around it, what they've achieved is still pretty extraordinary. And of course, at some point, every era comes to an end. So it may well be that it's this season. But to me, from the outside looking in, look at the game last night. There was a real opportunity. So Nottingham Forest have been pretty good this season. Their record against City since they've been back in the Premier League has been poor. I think they've got 1 point in total. It was an ideal game for City to get back on the horse. And what did they do? Well, they got back on the horse. There was a really interesting moment, actually. I don't know if you guys saw this, but City went 1-0 up. And just after that, at 1-0, Forest had a gilt-edged chance that came from a Man City defensive error. Defender passes the ball back across the line.
And
Chris
Wood at the moment, wouldn't it?
And Chris Wood, uncharacteristically given this season, puts it wide. If he scores there and the crowd start to turn, and it's like, oh, not again, it would have been really interesting to see what their metal was made of. But he missed it. De Bruyne scored pretty shortly afterwards, make it 2-0, and that was that, really. So there was a sliding doors moment where we could have seen if it was going to continue. It hasn't. It'll be interesting to see what they do next. I think the De Bruyne aspect of this is also pretty interesting. Jamie Carragher was saying, wasn't he, recently, that he thinks there might be a problem between Guardiola and De Bruyne. He knows much more about it than I do, I'm sure. He's much closer to it than me. But I was thinking at the time, is it really that, or is it just that he's 33 and has had so many injuries that he can't play as much now? And when he does play, like last night, he looked really good.
I would say the big difference is not even Kevin De Bruyne's kind of performance in that game. Jack Grealish was excellent. He has if Pep Guardiola every match can just get him to just be the metronome, slow things down, just kind of give the match a little bit of rhythm and stuff.
Yeah, I found that interesting.
Gundogan, De Bruyne and Grealish. I mean, you got two pretty old players and Jack Grealish, who's cracking on himself a little bit. And if they could just if he can just control that midfield, I thought he was brilliant last. He was really the difference maker yesterday.
That was really interesting because obviously Guardiola's trying to find solutions to problems in that midfield area because of the players he's got out, and it was also what made it. And I thought he did well. I agree with you. I thought he was decent. And it must be quite soul-destroying if you are like a proper central midfield player playing for Forest going, oh, for fuck's sake, this guy's not even fucking, doesn't even play in this position. But what's also interesting, makes it doubly interesting, is of course Doku from the left, where Grealish would like to play, scores a textbook Doku goal to add to an assist he already had. And it's like, okay, Grealish is probably thinking, I should probably do as well as I can in this position, because if I don't, I need to get a calendar out for Rodri's return, because otherwise I'm not going to play at all. But
maybe that's better for Grealish actually in the long term. I think it was Shay Given actually this week who was saying, like, that there's someone who like knows him reasonably well. It's a real shame to see him play out on the left. He feels he's a generational talent who should be playing in the centre a little bit more. So maybe this current dip is a good opportunity for him to do that.
Yeah, and I think that's right. I think you often have that conversation with players who are super skillful and capable of amazing things who play out wide. This conversation always happens. It's happened every single time that kind of thing goes on since I've been doing this show, where people go, can we get them in the middle and get them to affect the game more? Can we get them on the ball more, particularly? Yeah. And it normally happens in a situation where the other members of the team maybe aren't doing much, which obviously isn't the case in Man City. But if that is Grealish's future, I mean, he's 29 now, as Pete's alluded to, that would be super interesting as well. But look, let me end by saying, Man City play Palace next. They could go on this tear now. And if they go on this tear now, some of the things that people have been saying over the last few weeks are going to look pretty silly. That's not for me to say they're going to win the league, because I think Liverpool have been brilliant and there's a big gap there, and Man City have done so well over the last few years, and it comes to an end sometimes. But I would just be very, very careful talking about how the whole thing's gone to shit. I don't think that's the case, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they start to motor now.
And bearing in mind that Liverpool's fixture congestion, I think we mentioned it on the show on Monday, is horrific between now and their Accrington Stanley FA Cup match on the 11th of January. Right, coming up, history making own goals at Everton, and yet more managers are under pressure. Welcome back to the Football Ramble. Everton 4, Wolves 0. A shellacking I did not see coming at all. Young on the score sheet, Mangala. And 2 own goals from Dawson as well, becoming only the 5th Premier League player, Craig Dawson, to score 2 own goals in one game. Who are the others, gentlemen?
Oh, God.
Richard Dunn's got to be in there, surely.
Sure, that was my first port as well. Okay. He's not. I mean, Richard Dunn's never scored 2 own goals. I refuse to believe that.
I guess it's in the Premier League, so you're kind of in that situation. To be fair,
let me have a go at this. Did Wout Faz famously score 2 against Liverpool?
Wout Faz did do.
For Leicester, right?
Keep thinking on the Liverpool connection as well.
I can't think of any more.
Jamie Carragher.
Jamie Carragher, that was the one. Okay, that was the one I had. Didn't he famously score more goals against Liverpool?
You know about Kevin De Bruyne, do you? Yeah. What about all the own goals you scored, though, Jamie?
All right, and you've got 2 left.
I'm not going to get them, Pete.
You're not going to get them. All right.
Yeah. There must be a big striker involved. I'm going to go Mikel Antonio.
John Walters and Michael Proctor.
Jonathan Walters, there you go. You're on the right line.
Walters, yeah. You are on the right line, and I like it very much. Craig Dawson is Everton's joint second top scorer this season.
I quite literally don't know who Michael Proctor is. I'll have to Google him.
No, well, that's absolutely fine. I'm sure Michael Proctor will get over it. But Sean Dyche said before this game, he said every game is a must-win. Didn't see. He said that is something I've learned at Everton, which is you are an architect of your own downfall, there, aren't you, Andy?
Something I've learned in the last 2 months. Something I've learned in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. You've been a manager
since everyone
for a
has finally realised it's the Emperor's new clothes.
Yeah, it's. Did you see this one come? I didn't see it. I honestly didn't. I saw this being like a really poor 6-pointer turning into a goalless draw that served nobody. But it absolutely they put Wolves to the sword, and Gary O'Neill's in real trouble, Luke.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because no one's been a bigger defender of Gag than me, as you guys know. And I strongly felt they just needed to get through this really difficult start at the start of the season and to come out the other side of it. And that looked like it was coming to pass. You know, they narrowly lost to Manchester City back in October. Then they had some kind of doable games. Draw against Brighton away, not too bad. Draw against Palace at home, okay. Then they hammered Fulham, didn't they? At Fulham. And they beat Southampton as well. Fine, use your voucher. Good for you. But then the two games they really should have kicked on with, Bournemouth at home and then Everton away. They've looked bad. Like, I mean, the stuff I didn't see anything more than the goals against Bournemouth, and obviously they scored a couple themselves. Didn't watch the game, so I can't really comment on that in great detail. But last night, the goals they conceded were bad. They looked passive. They looked a bit comical. Yeah. And I just don't think you can afford to have these kind of performances and results when the start you've had was... I mean, the fixture computer's been tough for you, but you need to kick on when there's a chance to do so. West Ham next, Ipswich next, Leicester next, etc., etc. They have to do something. He's in the situation now, O'Neill, where if he has a result like that, people are going to be doing exactly what you've just done, Pete, and say, look, is he going to start to be worrying for his job? My fear is, I'll tell you now, my fear is Pompey carry on going the way they're going, Wolves carry on going the way they're going. At some point, these two lines intersect. Pompey get Gary O'Neill as their manager. He's going to be terrible, and my whole childhood is going to be destroyed. That's my fucking fear right now. So someone spare a thought for me.
I would say. I mean, it has been the week, or maybe week and a half, fortnight of sacked in the morning. There are so many people getting sacked in the morning when 9 times out of 10 it actually happens in the afternoon.
Is that right? Because of the Ramble curse, right?
Because of the Ramble curse, yeah. I mean, we were watching that West Ham ticker during the show yesterday. My goodness, or the day before that was. Southampton manager Russell Martin. Here we go, Luke. Here's familiar territory for you. Also under pressure, of course, as his team lost 5-1 to Chelsea yesterday. Is this all down to the fact that Russell Martin, if he was asked at one point if you could have any non-football athlete training with the team for a week, who would it be? He said Novak Djokovic. Is this indicative of a wider problem, a wider malaise, that he will have such odd chaps hanging around the training
Novak
ground?
Djokovic, well known as an absolute dick.
Maybe we should give Russell Martin a bit of credit here. Maybe he's thinking outside the box. He's thinking, well, maybe if Djokovic coaches the team, we'll all get COVID and get to cancel a load of games.
Which
we can't get beaten.
Lovely throwback shout, Andy, by you. That
it's good
Thank
stuff.
you.
Yeah.
No, never forget. Yeah, never forget Djokovic's behaviour. So I will start off with a positive because I think it's important to have to try and find something positive.
Makes the knife sliding easier, doesn't it?
I think so. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Think of it as me sharpening the knife. The positive bit.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Yeah.
Amazing bit of skill for Carl Walker-Peters for Southampton's goal. If he meant it, it was incredible. Everything else from then on was absolutely shit. It was a truly embarrassing display. I mean, no one's going to take me seriously because I don't like Southampton and I don't watch them that often. But I do firmly and sincerely believe it was an absolutely dreadful display. It was an embarrassing display, actually. I just feel like I'm generally, as a rule, quite sympathetic for managers who've delivered a team, particularly unexpectedly, into the Premier League. I think they deserve the chance. They've earned the right. It seems inherently unfair to me for them to be fired not even halfway through the season. Because what you're saying is, you've earned the right to be here. You've done this, but we're taking this away from you. However, watching what I saw last night, I mean, you cannot fail to come away with the conclusion that you might as well change the manager. You might as well, because it's historically bad. So what's the difference? You've had your chance. You've had like 4 months to give it a go. You've been woefully short, like woefully out of your depth. They always had a problem coming into this season about how they were going to play. They haven't solved that problem. They tried a couple of different bits and pieces. None of it's worked. The fact that Jack Stevens, who's the captain of the club, got a red card for pulling Cucurella's hair is just, I mean, that's clownish.
Yeah, that's old school.
Do you know what? Who was it who did it? It was Christian Romero did it and got away with it for Spurs. Cucurella is unquestionably a fucking idiot, right? But you cannot use that hair as a red rag to your bull.
No.
You have to see past it. And when you're the captain, you cannot do that. You know, it was woeful. It was really, really poor. I mean, towards the end of the game, it got into Chelsea. Let's just get some subs on and get them scoring, get their confidence up stuff. It was really, really bad. It was a bit
bad. Europe away, wasn't it? It was like their European adventures,
like FC Noah,
like that.
It was. And so look, if Southampton fans are looking for some solidarity from me, they will not find it. I will give them none. But I am broadly sympathetic to just your team playing like that and getting whooped. And they may as well send Russell Martin back to Ocean Club Ibiza and find someone else who wants to do it, because he's having a nightmare.
Really, I think and Kunku goal should really be the nadir of their season. If it can get worse from
that
there,
was so bad. The only reason I didn't mention that, Andy, is because their goalkeeper hasn't played an awful lot of football. And I don't think he was expecting to play.
He's their fourth choice keeper, Joe Lumley. And to my mind, when you hear like fourth choice keeper, Joe Lumley, I'm thinking seriously stringy 21-year-old. He's actually 29. He used to play for Borough for a bit. Like he's older than you sort of realise. But yeah, he felt a little bit ring rusty. But he's your fourth choice. He shouldn't ever be playing.
No, that's true. But I don't know. It does feel like an individual failure and failure of system. Like, you should never be conceding that goal in a senior game at any level. I don't care if he is fourth choice, really. And the whole Russell Martin thing, I mean, it depends what they want out of this season. If they think it's a bonus season where they're just going to squirrel the money and come
That's
back
what I know.
the
quite a lot of Southampton fans, given the geography of where I grew up, and I've had a lot of that chat, Andy, this season. I've had a lot of it.
The thing is, that's great in theory. But when you arrive back, I mean, bear in mind, it's not a strictly comparable situation, I suppose. But when Wimbledon got relegated to League Two, the first time that they've been relegated as AFC Wimbledon, 3 years ago, it turns out it's really hard to turn around the culture of the club if you've not won for 30 odd games.
Dangerous game to play. Really dangerous game to play.
Like
it's calcified by that point, isn't
it? The rebuild from there is enormous.
Well, I'm sure the St Mary's collective very much enjoyed the halftime tune "Naive" by the Kooks. A lovely choice by the DJ. It's good stuff.
Just can't think that Pete Darcy would knock out an indie disco on a Friday night in Lexington.
I would. That record there would not be a single Kooks track in my CD case.
Is that your red line?
To play out. That's my red line.
Pete, you've
got red line in the sand.
And listen, that tells its own story. Given that I've seen Pete's CD collection personally, he's got 3 Lost Profit CDs in there.
Another mention for Lost Profits, unless it got edited out. I imagine it did from yesterday's show. So tonight, a couple of Premier League fixtures: Fulham versus Brighton. That should be a fun little match, and Bournemouth versus Spurs.
Don't be rude. Fun little match.
Fun little match. Little guys, little mid-table guys having a little bit of
like it's an under-9s game on a Sunday.
What? They're going to be like, what? They're going to be 3-3 in it. They're going to be duking it out. Is Virgil van Dijk going to be knocking people's heads off? I don't think so.
I have to say, Ramblers, you're honoured to hear Pete Donaldson turning into Ray Parlour.
Yeah,
that's funny for he is.
Lovely little club. Yeah. Lovely little club this week.
Just get a Jaeger bomb down your Donaldson to finish the proper impression.
I will.
And also get yourself in quite a lot better shape.
He is for a man who clearly drinks as many Jaeger bombs as he does. He must be creating powder in it. I don't know what's going on there.
Can I just say, having worked with him for a wee while, he is, all joking aside, lovely guy, and
all action,
likes to party. No, he is absolutely disciplined about gym every day, and you know why?
Right.
He says this himself. Arsene Wenger.
Really?
Right. What?
Arsene Wenger completely revolutionised his lifestyle. And it stayed with him to this day. So he's in the gym every day. Like
Wenger, of course, is one of your best ripped older managers. I mean, from the generation, he is. He's absolutely stacked.
Do you rate him above that photo of Capello in Speedos?
He's too, but I would say he's too kind of rangy and sort of bony. His edges are too sharp. I would say with Wenger.
I've got to recall
show me pictures.
Pardew versus...
DM me some pictures.
DM me some pictures.
Of Arsene Wenger with his top off.
That always ends well when someone goes, DM me some pictures, doesn't it?
Come on.
I love the idea of you two both actually eventually separating from your long partners because there's been a DM exchange with photos of nudes, and it's basically it's just Arsene Wenger.
Just Arsene Wenger with his top off the crowd.